All right, so we'll get those formalities out of the way. Welcome everyone to our Master's in Dietetics and Nutrition at The Ohio State University Open House. We were so hoping to share with you this morning in person, but the realities are such that here we are, but at least I am warmer from being able to be at home and in my office rather than walking around campus today, but it's a beautiful sunny day here in Columbus. Yeah. I am joined today by Danielle Music, who arranged the open house. She's one of our coordinators for the dietetics programs at Ohio State, both undergrad and then at the grad level with the MDN. And she's a fantastic resource for all kinds of information. So continue to communicate with her with your questions. I'm Dr. Kennel. I'm one of the directors of the MDN. I have been at Ohio State for over a decade, and I am in my dream job. So this is what I'm really passionate about and feel my purpose is, and looking forward to talking with you all today. Dr. Chris Taylor is also here, as he's another co-director of the program, and he has included his email there in the chat in case you want to reach out to him as well. Dr. Taylor has been here for over a decade as well, a little bit longer than I have, and we have led this initiative to create one of the largest graduate programs in Ohio State. So I think that I will share turn the slideshow on here, so my slides are a little bit bigger. Let me know if you have any problems seeing that. Right, so there's two pathways to the MDN at Ohio State. So some of you might be in the first pathway. You might be a member of a DPD program and going to graduate with that DPD verification statement. And therefore you've met all the prereqs for the MDN, like through your bachelor's degree. And then there may be others of you who are getting a bachelor's degree in something else other than dietetics. And you've completed the prereqs for the program, or will be completing the prereqs for the program. So it's an interesting cohort of people, right? And I really love the variety that this brings. The fact that we have individuals from dietetics, but we also have people from business or psychology or kinesiology, exercise science, or just a variety of other paths, which really makes for more robust conversation and learning in the classroom. So either way, right, you can get to the MDN here at Ohio State, and we all start in the same place. So our MDN program follows what's called competency-based education. And this is true of all future education model programs through the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. And that future education model just means that this is the model that the Academy believes is the future of dietetics, and I'll explain why for a couple of reasons. Okay, so competency-based education shifts from time-based, like time tracking, how much time you spend doing things, to outcomes-oriented focus. And so, in other words, you're focused more on the skills and the judgment and the thinking that you're developing, rather than like how much time you're actually spending in a particular area. So this model allows us to evaluate progression towards capacity to practice. In other words, like that's what we care about, right? We really care about making you outstanding practitioners in the field. And to do that, right, you'll be able to, have the base knowledge, right, of fact gathering and interpretation, and then be able to show or demonstrate that learning a lot in the classroom, right? We do a lot of activities that take that knowledge and ask you to apply it in the classroom, and then out there in supervised practice, right, you're performing those skills. So this like, based on my experience with this program so far, right, it really does emphasize the skills that the dietitian does in practice, and this takes the stress off of students because they can focus their attention on building those skills, and they don't have to worry as much about the specific grades that they earned. One of our faculty members in this program said to the students at the start of this year, she said, I have never been asked about my grades in a master's program. Like she's had a number of jobs, job interviews, and no one ever said, well, did you get all A's? At this point, they really care about the skills that you can demonstrate, right? And that's where we want to be with this program emphasis as well. So an example of this, right, would be where in the first semester, our students do 2 standardized practice simulations where they counsel a paid actor on a condition like weight management or diabetes. And the first one is not graded, right? So they just get the lay of the land. They get the experience. They do a self-evaluation of how they did during that session using a rubric, and then they get instructor feedback using the same rubric. And it's a great way for them to learn, right? And then the second time that they do the standardized patient simulation later on in the semester, then it's for an actual grade. And then in the second semester, we do 2 more of these, and we assign a grade, but we also are evaluating the competencies at that point, right? Which is what matters most, to show that you have met those competencies even before you get out into supervised practice. So in other words, there's a lot of practice, there's a lot of feedback, right, before any kind of like formal evaluation. If you have questions about that, I'd love to address them.
Julie, can you make the PowerPoint like full screen?
Yeah, sorry, I thought I did. Did it?
It's just like it's in, there you go.
Is that it? Did that make it better?
I'm not seeing it on my end, but.
All right.
I just had a request, sorry.
Yeah. Let me try something else. Does that change things at all? No.
I don't see it on my end, but I don't know if maybe it's because you're recording too, or I don't know. If we can't do it, I don't think it's the end of the world.
Okay, it probably has something to do with multiple screens.
Now I see it. Yep.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. Hopefully that it stays that way. All right. Okay. Okay. So a lot of times we get asked, like, what makes Ohio State stand out, right? Like, why is our program different? Why should somebody choose Ohio State over another program? And the first thing I would say is just our experience, right? So medical dietetics, which is one of the program areas at Ohio State that have come together to offer this MDN degree, had the first coordinated program in the country. Right, so that was the first model to combine didactic education with the supervised practice components into a single program. And there's a lot of power in doing that, right? So that you're not just learning in the classroom and then completely shifting to supervised practice. It's nice because you'll see, like in a coordinated program like this, the students have opportunities to learn in the classroom and then apply it like in their second or third semester, and then come back to the classroom, right, and have more discussion about like how that went. And so you're doing the supervised practice is truly integrating it within the coursework, and each one informs the other. So it's a really powerful way of learning. And in the early 2000s, Ohio State started a coordinated graduate program to provide the same didactic training, but just at the graduate level. So this is really serving as the model for our MDN, and now it's just shifted into like a competency-based version of that. So even though the MDN is new, we've been doing this for quite a while at Ohio State. Why else? Well, we think that that our program works hard to add value-added skills. And what does that mean? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. But the master's degree itself, right? The elevation of the profession to the master's degree itself doesn't necessarily mean that we get paid more or we are more valued in the workforce, right? Or that there's more demand for dietitians. It's really about like what you do with that master's degree and the types of skills that you're fostering within that master's degree. And so we have, and I'm just highlighting here, right, some of the things that we think this master's degree delivers, right? It's going to change the way that you think, right? It's going to improve your critical thinking and inquiring mind. It's going to give you some technological expertise that is valued out in the field in a variety of different contexts, so that doesn't mean that you have to be a technological expert, but it does help, right? If you know how to develop infographics and write blog posts and develop presentations that have added elements that others haven't been trained to do. We have several courses that focus on like supervisory and management skills, including entrepreneurial work that is done by Professor Julie Jones, who has over 30 years in the field and food service management, but she's a wealth of information. She's like won every award that you could possibly know in the field of food service management, and she brings all of that to our students in the classroom. And so really giving them the information they need to start their own business, right, or to introduce a new service or a new product. We work on communications and some of those ideas behind like freelance writing or taking scientific information and translating it to the public, and a lot of focus on interprofessional collaboration. So this is a push not just of our program, but at Ohio State overall. So Ohio State has established an interprofessional education committee that represents programs from all over the university. And so our students are working on cases or doing simulations with social work, with nursing, medicine, physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, right? And it's really fun to see them all come together and learn about the different professions. It really raises the value that they see in what a dietitian can do. And therefore, and vice versa, right? You're learning about the value that they bring. And therefore, even before you get out into practice, you already know how to work together or some of the ways that you can work together in these interprofessional teams. So those are those are some of the ways I feel like we're adding value to this degree and making you more marketable, right? And making you more capable out in the work field, and not just in traditional jobs of dietitians, but in, beyond that. The other thing that I really feel is a strength of Ohio State is just our partnerships. We have over 150 preceptors. We have over 50 sites that we partner with. We have our own, the Ohio State University Wexner Medical Center, which is a level 1 trauma center. We get cases that you just don't see at other places in Ohio. It has one of the highest, it has the highest rated cancer center ranking. It's pretty vast. This is the latest, you can see the picture here of the latest critical care tower. And we're also in the process of building a tower just the same size or maybe even bigger. And it's going to be finished in the next couple of years. And so we keep continuing to expand what is already a pretty large staff of dietitians, treating a variety of patient populations. So along with that, though, is the picture on the right. Ohio State Wexner Medical Center has a food truck, right? And that food truck is staffed by several dietitians and several chefs, and they go out into the community. I think you see here in the red shirt is Chef Jim Warner, and he once told me that he did like over 250 presentations in a single year. And so they're out in the communities like every day, and they take the food truck out and they teach about culinary nutrition, right? They help people learn how to make simple but healthy foods. And they're working with, a lot of lower income, lower resourced populations, but also like our athletes over in sports nutrition and, more like wellness type settings. So Ohio State is not just about like the confines, right, of the hospital itself. It's about that outreach like into the community. So really proud of the work that's done there. They make great mentors. We also partner with Nationwide Children's Hospital, which is the second busiest and the third largest children's hospital in the country. And they have a number of expertise on the inpatient side, like in critical care, on the outpatient and clinic arena. And then also they have a center for healthy weight and nutrition, which does traditional like lifestyle behavioral nutrition education, but also bariatric surgery and in the pediatric population. So we have a lot of students who are interested in that, as well as, Nationwide Children's offering their own food service and their own wellness, employee wellness. I would say that Nationwide Children's takes like more students or just the same amount of students as Ohio State does. So they're a pretty big partner with what we do. All right, so the MDN itself, I'll talk a little bit about the curriculum. And again, put your questions in the chat or just stop me at any time. The program is a 5-semester program. So you start in the fall and you finish the following spring, right? There is a summer, that first summer, that you continue to take a few classes. You'll see in the full curriculum in just a moment. So all the coursework, all the supervised practice, and then a capstone project is rolled into this. And after you finish those requirements, then you're eligible to take the registration exam, the national registration exam. It is a full-time program. It is not online. We don't have distance options. Every once in a while, we'll have we'll have a student who wants to do a supervised practice in a different in a different state, or, they have a connection somewhere, and we may be able to work that out like in a final semester, but really this program is intended to be here in Columbus, Ohio, full-time, and so far we have been back to in-person in the classroom and almost fully. And this last semester, I think there were a couple of courses that were online, but they were intended to be online. Otherwise, we did meet in person throughout the fall semester. And Danielle, you might be able to speak a little bit to like what supervised practice looks like.
Yeah, so I help coordinate a lot of the rotations and placements for your supervised practice. And I would say that pretty much all of the, clinical inpatient, like in the hospital type work, as well as food service, is operating as it normally would and normally has in person. There might be a day randomly, that you do some remote work. But then we're finding in our like public health, community nutrition, wellness sites, as well as outpatient clinical sites, that those are operating, I'd say, hybrid. So maybe half and half, split, where a few days you're going in and a few days, you're working from home. Some of them are continuing to be fully remote. So it just sort of depends on the site itself and, their operations. I'd say some of the bigger facilities, are definitely doing more in person, but also know that just because something's remote doesn't mean that you're not also getting that patient interaction. So a lot of our outpatient sites, you're still able to, interact with the patients, whether it's over the phone or a video, telehealth type platform. So yeah, I kind of envision that's how it will be for this next year too. So.
I think telehealth is here to stay. And we had a student just ask us recently, she's like, I think I might want to do a job that involves telehealth. So can I get some experience in supervised practice doing telehealth? So it's actually something students are coming to us and like, kind of making sure that they get that experience so that they can speak to that when they go on the job market. So there is value in those virtual rotations. I think it's also valuable from a standpoint of them being able to access rotations that aren't necessarily based here in Columbus, Ohio, but we might have a partner, like, for example, we partner with the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, and so student doesn't need to go to Chicago to do a rotation with them. They're able to do that virtually, so it does give us some flexibility there as well. Yeah, I think it's, and part of that those value added skills, right? So I see there's a couple of questions here.
Yeah, I was gonna say a question about the culminating and then the capstone, which I probably just didn't get to the capstone yet.
Yeah, so let's see. I know I have a slide that talks a little bit more about it. So I will get to both of those, the culminating and the capstone. All right, so this is what the curriculum looks like in a nutshell, in a Buckeye nutshell. I put in blue the courses that are part of like our medical nutrition therapy series. And so you'll see that that series is delivered over 3 semesters. There's first 3 semesters. We have year 1, autumn 1, and then year 1, spring, and then year 1, summer. And that's really meant to give you a strong foundation in medical nutrition therapy. We look at medical nutrition therapy in a broad context, right? I'm not just talking about inpatient or even just outpatient work. Medical nutrition therapy is applied in several of our community rotations. Interns use medical nutrition therapy when they're in private practice settings, when they're working in sports nutrition, when they are, essentially when they're at WIC and other community sites. And so this can be thought of from a very much like a wellness or preventative, setting all the way through to like high acuity care. And it allows us to dig into the disease conditions more deeply, right? Probably more deeply than you did as an or you even did as an undergrad. Right, so we're going to elevate what any background that you might have, even as a dietetics undergrad, and we're going to do that by digging deeper into the pathophysiology, understanding the pharmacology that comes alongside of it. Have you do, patient simulations, those standardized patients like I talked about, and practice your nutrition-focused physical exams, for example, with paid actors, again, before you get into supervised practice. It's very robust. And in the summer here, there's even, the more detail in terms of like pediatrics and learning pediatric MNT. So the green, so that's the blue areas, and then the green are like the supervised practice. So you can see that you start supervised practice like in the spring or summer. And it's just a little, drop right at first. It's just like a little drop in the bucket first, with like a 90 to 100 hour supervised practice rotation during the spring semester, and ramping that up into summer. And then you'll see in that second year, you're more focused on the supervised practice with just a little bit of coursework worked in, right? So you see that shift, but it is integrated throughout. And the other courses that are here, right, represent those other areas that we're focused on in terms of community, technology, communications, entrepreneurship. And then you'll see a couple of elective courses, and I have a slide here that talks a little bit more about our electives as well. Right. And I'll talk about that capstone, right? Okay, so here is just a general idea of what our electives look like. And we're adding to these, right? So these are the ones that we're starting with, and we hope to continue to add to them over time. So you can see they're a mix of community, right, global, as well as more medical nutrition therapy, more clinical, if that's something you see yourself wanting more advanced skills. And so we have an advanced diabetes course, and we have an advanced nutrition support course taught by Dr. Kristen Roberts, who recently run like the Educator of the Year award for Ohio. She is very involved in Aspen, and this class, this advanced nutrition support class, really does a great job of preparing students for taking the certificate in nutrition support that the Academy offers, right? So it's an extra like layer of certification that you get once you're a dietitian, but these students who take this course in like their last semester, are right on target for getting that job and then taking that exam pretty quickly. So we also have some classes that focus more on sports nutrition, dietary supplements, more that wellness piece. We have a non-diet approaches to health I'm going to teach for the first time this semester that'll talk about, weight stigma, diet culture, and then, ways in which to perhaps, treat health, treat weight through intuitive eating, right, and other non-diet approaches. And then we have a nutrigenomics course that students are often interested in, right, like that application of technology and science at the genetic level and understanding the interactions with diet. And we have several policy courses for those interested in that level of care, right? Like the power of nutrition policy and setting nutrition policy to influence behavior. So there's a pretty wide range there. And so your program completion, right, is the coursework. I talked a lot about that. I gave you some other examples here of some of those value out, how we train, how the activities roll out to help with those value added skills. I've talked a lot about simulation and interprofessional, but pitch presentations our students did at the end of this last semester, and they had spent the semester like designing a new product or service, researching it, and then giving a pitch presentation like you would if you were trying to get your idea funded. And in fact, the instructor for that class is helping a couple of the groups continue to further their idea, and they're going to actually pitch it to some people who could fund those projects. So they're moving on, which isn't a part of, doesn't have to be, but they might move it on and roll it into their Capstone project, which I'll talk about in just a minute. So it's exciting, right, to see students like bring their ideas to that step. So we have so you have the coursework, you have supervised practice. Right, we reached the minimum of 1,000 hours because that's where the most state licensure boards are across the country. Yeah, and so I can talk about certificate programs here in a second, Jeremy. And then the Capstone Project, which looks like this. Right, so this is not a thesis, right, because we are focused on making you excellent practitioners, right, who understand the research, who can look at the research, use the research to come to decisions about how to provide care, right, and provide services. But you're not coming here to become an excellent researcher, right, which is what a thesis would offer. So that's kind of the distinction. If you're looking to, become like a researcher, then you might choose a program with a thesis in it versus a capstone. But this is really designed for the student to show what they've learned throughout the program and that real world application of it. So it could be like an evidence-based case study. It could be a program or curriculum design and development, so developing educational materials and curriculum based on the literature. It could be a publishable lit review and analysis, kind of like a gap analysis, like figuring out, okay, what does the literature say? What do we know? What do we not? What does it not know? Or even a quality improvement project, right? A way of improving a process in any setting, right? And so you're matched with a faculty member for the last 2 semesters of the program. And I give you some examples here of some of the topics or projects that our students are working on right now, right? So, we have an individual who's looking at low FODMAP and the improvement of gastrointestinal distress among endurance athletes. Some of our students are going to help with conducting focus groups and learning how to do that particular skill. So there's an element of research rolled in there, but they're not responsible like for their own research thesis. We have a student who's writing a chapter for one of the Academy pocket guides for nutrition support. Case studies, examples here, or even like the analysis of nutrition policy. So again, it kind of runs that gamut, which is reflective of our faculty and reflected of the curriculum. So Jeremy, we are working on several certificate programs, and these are above and beyond anything that I have presented so far. Certificates would be something that you would, it would be a certificate that you could list on your resume along with your degree. And it would come from Ohio State, right? And we have a certificate in preventative health, that focuses more on the prevention side of nutrition and health. And then we're developing our sports nutrition certificate program. So you really don't have a lot of time. You don't have enough time in these 5 semesters to do multiple certificate programs. Really, just you would choose one, and then you would take a couple extra courses, 2 extra courses from what I've listed here to achieve that certificate. Yeah, and I can talk more about that if you want in just a second. So hopefully, I guess before I talk about the application, I know we had a question about culminating, right? And so culminating is designed to give students more experience in an area of interest for them. So students do weigh in on what they want that culminating experience to be. And but it looks like any of our other rotations in the sense that, it could be somewhere where the intern was previously or somewhere, so they want to go back there, right, to get more experience, or it could be a new opportunity for them, but just in a different setting or a slightly different patient population, right? So it's about 20% of our total supervised practice hours. It's a good chunk of time. Danielle, do you want to add anything else to that?
Yeah, my colleague Kathy Garrison and I, who work together for the placements, back in probably like early autumn semester, we sent out an initial, like culminating preferences form, and that allows you to sort of give us your initial thoughts on maybe certain practice areas or certain patient populations that you might think you want to work more with for that culminating opportunity. And then we revisit that, so then we set up individual meetings with each student and talked through those preferences some more, and then what we ultimately end up having you do is rank 3 options that you think that you would be happy with for a culminating experience. Again, this could be a specific site. It could be somewhere you've been previously. It could be, again, maybe more of a practice area. So let's say nutrition counseling, just sort of broadly, you want more experience in that. So really, it's probably one of the most challenging placements for us to identify, just because we really do want it to be something meaningful for you, right? Not that any of your other experiences aren't meaningful, but it's sort of that special interest driven experience. So I'd say that right now we're sort of just tying up some loose ends, and I feel pretty good about our ability to match, student preferences based on the sites that we've selected for them. So, and a lot of the times we can use the resources we already have, right? Like the sites and the networks that we already have can oftentimes provide these culminating experiences. There are a few instances where we're sort of reaching outside of the box a little bit more. So again, maybe a student is able to identify a connection, and we can sort of facilitate that behind the scenes logistics that needs to occur in order to make a rotation happen. So hopefully that gives a little bit more context in how we approach the culminating experience.
Yeah, Danielle and Professor Kathy Garrison, and we have a new team member coming on board to join them. They work really hard for students, and they're very student-centered. So I'm grateful for them to be here. sorry, that was, yeah, be here and work with this program. All right, any other questions about curriculum? Anything I've covered so far? All right, otherwise I'll talk a little bit about the application.
And Julie, I'll add, Lisa is on, so I don't know if there's anything, I have time designated for her, but if there's anything we want her to interject.
That's great timing. So Lisa Tarek is a great contact for a lot of the information that I'm going to go over now, and she can probably add to it. So the admissions application is directly through the Ohio State Graduate School. So we don't use DICAS. DICAS isn't involved at all. There's no match happening for this program. So you can apply to this program in addition to DICAS and the match. And what you do is you have all the information or the materials on this slide, right, submitted through this application process. Right, so we'll just have to verify the bachelor's degree with a minimum of 3.0 cumulative undergrad GPA. So you'll provide those transcripts so that we can do that. Then you'll upload a resume or a CV, and then a statement of intent. And the statement of intent is really a great way for us to get to know you, right, and know what you feel your interests are in nutrition, what your purpose might be for that future career, what draws you to the profession. And you've probably done some thinking about, like, well, how can you stand out, right? How can you stand out within that statement of intent? And I would just say that, yeah, I mean, a lot of people come to dietetics because they want to help other people and they're passionate about nutrition, right, and health. So if you can dig a little deeper, right, if you can go into more reflection about what that means to you, that's often helpful. We would love to hear about, like, your professional goals, what some of the places that you might see yourself in 5 years or 10 years, and how you feel like this program, right, would be a good fit for you to be able to reach those career goals. I personally love stories, right? So if you can tell it in a story or do some storytelling, right, that's very memorable for me and really helps me connect to you as a person. And then you'll also have your 3 letters of recommendation, which we don't designate who they need to come from. We just would like you to submit from people who can speak best to your strengths and your goals. So we give you some suggestions for areas of discussion and what those letter writers might include, right? But we leave it up to you, whether to include, like, a faculty member or a supervisor, or a combination of those of things. So I think Dr. Taylor addressed the question about transcripts there. Yeah.
Right, and those transcripts would not come from your high school, but from the institution where you had taken those courses. And so that there are great directions on the GP admissions website on explaining the importance of what transcripts to send in and how to send them, all done electronically upload. So it's very super efficient.
Good. I know I know sometimes when you're uploading transcripts or you send them into DICAS, they take a long time. They're delayed, in posting and all of that. Does that happen too here, Lisa? Or are they pretty quick to?
You know what? I think we're over the hump. The university shutdown, I think, kind of affected, but we are back to almost normal since the pandemic with individuals in the office and scanning them and such. So
great. And then completion of all prerequisite courses. So you'll have a screen that has you enter in the dates for which you've met the prerequisite courses and how you've met those. And again, if you're a DPD grad or going to be a DPD grad, even if you don't fill this out correctly, we're going to know that you have met all prerequisites. Or even if you're like, oh, I took 2 courses that might work for this area, which one should I list? Don't stress about it if you don't have that DPD verification, if you have a DPD verification statement. If you don't, right, and you're concerned about being able to appropriately document your prereqs, Lisa is your contact person. So if you email dietetics@osumc.edu, we have that on this list of slides, and we'll put it in the chat here for you as well. That email is going to come to Lisa, right? She'll be able to see it. And you can ask her, right? You can share with her your individual situation and ask her how you should document it. Lisa, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, actually, and I'll talk about this here in a little bit, but I have a wonderful staff in admissions as well as graduate services, and I'll put their names and such in the chat that do answer those emails. Maybe some of you have worked with Mallory Rusnak in reviewing syllabi and asking questions about the process. We also have Allison Brettfeller, who is our admissions coordinator, who works behind the scenes and makes sure that your application, your transcripts, statement uploads, things of that nature are all ready for the program to review. So great. Thanks, Dr. Taylor, for putting in dietetics. I will put a couple more emails and our names for people who will work in the office, and that will assist you.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so those prereqs can be done anytime before the program starts. So they don't have to be done at the time of your application. You can mark that they will be done like later in the spring or later in the summer, just as long as they're done by like August 20th when the program starts next year. And here, in fact, is that list of prerequisites. There's a couple that you can take in your first semester of the MDN if you don't have them completed by the time that the program starts. And those are listed here with a single asterisk, right? So this fundamentals of food science, like a foods lab course, can be done here, and this food service systems can be done here in your first semester if you don't get to those. We would love it if you did get to those, because it makes it easier for that first semester and the transition to a graduate program that's already, fairly intense. But you can, and people do. People have done it. And then life cycle nutrition is rolled into a lot of our coursework. So that one's that one is also something that you don't have to have ahead of the program. Okay, so the admissions, we look at applications for early admission consideration on December 1. And so that's passed, but that's our early admissions. And the reason why that's important is because anybody who has applied by that December 1 date has automatically been considered for university fellowships. And we've reached out to those individuals, or we'll be reaching out to those individuals shortly, so that they know they're in the running, are a candidate for a university fellowship. We also can tell you whether or not you are recommended for acceptance into this program by the end of January, which is nice. Like, if you apply by December 1, we'll be interviewing you in January here in the next couple of weeks, and we'll have a final recommendation that we'll submit to the graduate school by the end of January. And that way, right, if you want to go ahead and say, I'm coming to Ohio State, then you do not have to, pay all your DICAS fees. You don't have to pay your D&D digital fees, right? You can pull out of that national match. So that's an advantage, right? But our final deadline for the program is January 31st. So everyone has until then to come. We go through a similar process after that January 31st deadline. We'll interview in February, and we'll let people know before the date in March in which before that students have to essentially pull out of the national match if they know they're not going to accept the match that they get. And so we recommend to anyone who has been accepted at Ohio State to go ahead and knows that they want to come to Ohio State to go ahead and do that, so that you're not taking somebody else's slot in the match process. So we we review and score your application itself, right? We do that comprehensive interview, and we're looking holistic at who you are and not just, focused in on your grades or academic scores. We really want to know more about your volunteer experiences, your work experiences, the other, personal skills that you bring. And then we give a final indication to the graduate school of acceptance. These are just some links to more information about our university fellowships, right? We have a merit-based one, which is basically based on your GPA as an undergrad, and you really have to have like a 3.8 or higher to compete in that merit and achievement-based selection criteria. And then we have enrichment fellowships, which those who bring diversity, and diversity can be looked at in a very broad context here, in addition to, having like a 3.5 or 3.6 or higher GPA are competitive for these graduate enrichment programs. I will say though that we have other information about scholarships and financial support on our website, and they include, right, applying anyone, no matter whether you're new to a dietetics program or been in a DPD program, anybody, right, can join or can apply to the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics Foundation, because you'd be entering into a dietetics program. So this is a great resource. They give away, like, I don't know, millions, I think, of dollars every year to students around the country. And then we have some other like local resources in our colleges and schools here that contribute to the MDN program. We also have some opportunities to be employed as undergrad graders for undergraduate nutrition courses. So this is like an hourly wage, somewhere around 10 hours a week. That just gives you a little bit of, pocket money to help with living expenses. And we have a couple of programs within the program that occasionally will offer a stipend, but we don't have any like tuition reimbursement other than these university fellowships. Right. I think I'm going to put it here, the final links. So if it's appropriate, I'll answer questions that might have come up, and then I'm going to turn it over to Lisa and her team, because I see many of you and your team are here. That's great.
I think most of the questions have been answered through the chat, but I did see one asking about demographics of the current class, male, female ratio, age range, number.
Oh, yeah. How many students? So we have, our first cohort was a cohort of 24, and our second cohort is about 34, 35. And we would look for something similar within this next year. It won't be any bigger than that. And as for, just finishing out our other programs and ramping up this program, male to female ratio, I guess I could do the math in my head, 1 to 10, 1 to 8, 1 male for every 8 females, maybe. I think that's probably pretty close. We'd love to get that ratio, more equal. Age range, yeah, it's I think, even not in this MDN, but in the coordinated grad program at Ohio State, I'm for sure individuals have been anywhere from like 20 to 50, 55. I mean, some people come to the program like as a second career. It's rare. But yeah, I'd say, most people are in their 20s, early 20s to late 20s, with a couple of people in their 30s in this most recent class. And then was there a question about, why this program and not the separate programs not the other programs at Ohio State?
I answered it in the chat.
Great. Okay.
Someone asked about our standalone internship program.
Okay.
So.
Great. Yeah, so Jeremy, we only do acceptance for the fall term when you're a transfer student. When you're a student at Ohio State in our Ohio State DPD program, you have a couple more options. But if you're a transfer student, it's only for the fall acceptance. Yeah. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Lisa and her team so she can share with you the great resources they bring.
For Ms. Ward, she asked about the graduate school reference forms for the fellowship. They would be the same exact graduate reference form that you used for the application, but it's going to be geared towards the fellowship at that point. So we don't use, and Dr. Taylor and Kennel may have already contacted students in regards to the requirements for the fellowship competition, but it would still be the same form. Okay.
Lisa,
Well,
do you have anything you want to share, like on your screen, or because I can make you a co-host?
You know what, actually, I think I'm just going to throw them in the chat just because
Okay.
it will probably be easier for everyone to keep. I think it's a little bit wonky, but it'll be fine. I'm Lisa Tarek. I actually, I'm very, very pleased to be here. The medical dietetics, well, the MDN, I'm so sorry. I revert back to what I've known. I am a graduate of the coordinated undergrad in medical dietetics and a licensed and registered dietitian. So I'm very, very happy to be here and to work with such a wonderful team of faculty and staff for the program. So, and I think that it's just wonderful to see the great number of students and the great things that our students have done in our previous undergrad as well as our MDN program now. So welcome, and I'm just so happy to be here. I'm currently the Director of Student Services in the School of Health and Rehabilitation Sciences. So that's just a big fancy word for overseeing the academic advising office for our undergrad and graduate programs. I have a wonderful team. I'm up to 8 now of advisors and recruiters and admissions coordinators who work to make sure that these processes and enrollment and graduation run very smoothly. Currently, Ashley McCabe is our graduate program manager, and she's coming back from a leave of absence next Wednesday. So some of you may have worked with her previously, but like I had mentioned, Mallory Rusnak has just stepped right in and has been answering and meeting with prospective students. So between her and I, over the last 3 months, we've been working to, just to communicate and answer questions and just be part of the MDN team. So Ashley will be returning, and how things kind of work in our office is we have different mailboxes. You can email Ashley and Mallory directly. However, we do have, and I put it in the chat, the dietetics as well as the admissions email, and those do go to Ashley and Mallory, as well as Allison, who is our admissions coordinator. So if you have a question about the status of your application, if it's complete, Allison would be the individual to work with. But if you have just general questions about the program, you can start with Ashley and Mallory, and then they would work with everyone in the MDN program and the faculty to get the best answer for you, okay? If you are interested in setting up an appointment with Ashley or Mallory, we do have an appointment line. We are in Atwell Hall, right in front of that. You had showed that really nice picture of the James and the emergency department. So that building, it's kind of, I get really nostalgic sometimes because that's, where I had gone to school, and it's so much with the improvements and things of that. It's just such a great building. So we are down on the southwest side of campus as well. Let me see if there's anything else. How many of you guys, by a show of hands, are currently have applied or will be applying for the Autumn 22? Awesome, great. So we have a couple perspective, wonderful. Well, we are looking forward to, making sure that your applications are complete and reviewed. And I know there was a question about if you had transcripts that were updated from autumn semester. Yes, you should turn those into GP admissions like you had done your original transcripts, so they can be considered. I do recommend that you do that as soon as possible so that your application can be I'm sorry, can be revised and updated with that information to make you the most competitive as possible. Thank you very much, Mallory, for putting the appointment line in, and Dr. Taylor for showing where Atwell is, because I know if you're not familiar, it does kind of seem a little bit off. But we're in the heart of the Med Center, which is really exciting to be. Any questions that maybe I didn't answer? I'm just so excited. I feel like I've been just talking. Courtney has a question. Is it just one application, or do we apply to the master's and the DI separately? Our MDN application is separate from the DI. Is that correct, Julie? I want to make sure that I'm not misspoken.
Well, so
because
it's just
we do
one application. Yeah, it's one application. Yeah.
Okay.
So the MDN is just the grad school application. Everything's housed in that.
Right. So if they were applying to the DI, would that be a separate?
Well, so yeah, so the MDN is really designed for the student who doesn't have a master's degree yet, right? Correct. And then the other standalone dietetic internship program that we have at Ohio State now requires a master's degree when you start it. So if you find yourself in that boat, yeah, let us know, and we'll talk to you more about that. But in that case, it would be through DICUS and a match process. Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. There's another question. If you only had one class, if it's not a prerequisite or it's not going to greatly change your GPA, your overall GPA, I know it costs money to send in your transcript. So if it's not a prereq, or if it's not going to greatly change your overall, which most of the time it doesn't, because you're dealing with maybe 3 or 4 credits, it's not necessary. But if it is a prereq, I would send it in so we can see the grade that you received. Awesome. Okay, well, I'll be here if you have questions, throw them in the chat. And thank you, Julie, and for the opportunity to talk today.
Yes, thank you for joining us. You're such a great part of this team and making it easy for students, not just to enter the program, but then as they're in the program to be able to navigate the program and feel supported in those ways. Great. I would also mention that, and while the students, we have some students who are coming in and some additional faculty who want to say hello and maybe give some information. But as they're doing that, I'll also say that HRS, where the MDN is housed, has invested in students' mental health as well. And so there's actually 2 full-time counselors just for students in the health sciences programs, and they are used very robustly. I think, and so instead of waiting on university, mental health services, which are also available to our students, of course, right? The college itself has invested in their own counselors for the health sciences students. Dr. Roberts, can we catch you before you leave? Do you want to say?
Any of our other MDN faculty and staff that decided or were able to pop on, if you want to just say hi, introduce yourselves, that'd be great. And then your job is done. Yeah, I don't know if Dr. Roberts is still on.
You may have had to jump off. Kathy, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, I'm Kathy Garrison, and I'm on faculty with medical dietetics, but also work with the MDN students, and I do the placements for the students for your supervised practice rotations. Danielle and I work together on that, and as our program grows, we're going to be adding more support staff to that. But for right now, you probably see my name coming around, like Danielle's name when it comes time to do supervised practice placements. So. Does anybody have any questions for supervised practice placements? or anything about that topic.
We answered some during the
Did you? Okay,
earlier, but
perfect.
yeah, thanks, Kathy. And then I
Okay,
think
thanks.
Holly, do you want to say hi?
Sure. Hi, everyone. It's great to see so many people on this call and interest in the MDN program. I teach in medical dietetics and then also in the MDN program. I actually teach the third semester of the medical nutrition therapy course along with the lab. And then I teach some of the electives as well in the program.
Thanks, Holly. And then is there any, I don't know, Dr. Taylor, do you want to say hi and show your face?
Yeah, I can pop up and besides being the little text string on the side here.
Yeah.
Dr. Taylor, I have been here almost 18 years, coming up on that. So it's been a while. I'm one of the co-directors of the program with Dr. Kennel, the director of the coordinated program in medical dietetics and director of medical dietetics. So just welcome you all. I probably have emailed or chatted with some of you on the phone. So now you have a two-dimensional version of me instead of just my voice. If you have any other questions about the program and such, feel free to reach out. We have an amazing group of people that are here to help you in the application process and then help you through the program all the way through. So I'm blessed to be working with a great group of people that are really invested in the future of the profession. So thanks again for joining us.
Great, thank you. And thanks for all your tech support. And then last, what we have on the agenda is we have 3 of our current MDN students. And so they represent, I think, a pretty nice array of like experience, as well as like personal and professional backgrounds. And so hopefully that will sort of tie into the question we had about sort of like demographics as far as like what do the students look like in the program. So we have, I'll let them introduce themselves, but we have Avni, we have Kara, and we also have Chelsea. So I don't know if Avni, you want to just introduce yourself and say, give a little bit about, sort of like where you came from academically and professionally, and just sort of maybe give a highlight reel of your rotations thus far. I think a lot of students are often interested in that, so.
Sure. Thank you, Professor Music. Hi, everyone. My name is Avni Patel. I'm in my second year of the MDN program. So my background is actually in pharmacy. I received my PharmD from the University of Pittsburgh in 2008, so quite a while ago. Never expected to be back in school so many years later, but I'm so happy to be here. I found nutrition kind of a little bit later in life, but it became a passion and I wanted a formal education. So I know OSU had such a good reputation for nutrition. And so I found the MDN program. I still remember calling Dr. Taylor and talking to him about the program and learning more. And here I am, just a few years later in the program. So rotations has been such a great asset in addition to the classroom education for nutrition. So my first rotation was at the SNAP Ed, the OSU SNAP Ed. And that was great. I've never learned about those kind of resources, for the community. So that was great. I worked with Danielle there. And it was just great to be kind of like helping the community learn more about resources for nutrition education. And then my second rotation was my food service rotation at Ohio Health. And again, never did food service rotations. So that was like another world on its own. So that was wonderful. And then I was at the Diabetes and Endocrinology Center of Ohio. Short name is DECO here in Dublin. And I was with Jennifer McCann. It was a great rotation for endocrinology, if any of you are interested in that, but it was where I feel like my counseling skills as a dietitian really came together. It's one thing to be in the classroom and even have standardized patients, but it's quite another to have 6 patients to go through and, just a few like 2-3 hours, and you have to prioritize, and you have to be on your toes and know what you need to get across to the patient. So that was great. And then I'm trying to think what came after that. Yeah. Oh, I was at the Student Wellness Center with Janelle after that. And that was another great experience because I was working with students, you know, at Ohio, at OSU. And it was kind of another, you know, population that I had never worked with before, and learning about what's important, you know, for our young adult population. And after that, I was in the MICU here at OSU. So very clinical, very inpatient. And for me as a pharmacist, that was a very special experience for me, just doing nutrition support, because for me, I feel like that's where pharmacy and nutrition come together and meet. So it was great rounding every day with the medical team. And I just finished up a rotation with Dr. Kennel, actually. It was a wonderful experience because you know, I got to do a lot of projects that are really important to me. So, and she was very receptive to that. And so I got to do a lot of fun things. One of them being helping one of our professors who teaches an undergrad class, the human nutrition class, Dr. Bomser, and helping him set up one of the nutrition labs for a class he's going to be teaching next semester, in the autumn semester. So never thought I'd get to, you know, do all those things, but I think rotations are such a great way to recognize your own skills and to challenge yourself for the skills that you're still developing. So, but it's been such a great experience. Each rotation has offered, you know, so much and added to my education.
Great, thank you, Avni. Yeah, Avni also helped me with a piloting program through the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics for retail nutrition curriculum. So she put together an amazing portfolio. So I'm excited to share that. Chelsea, do you want to share a little bit about where you're coming from and what you've been up to throughout the program thus far?
Hi, everyone. My name is Chelsea. I have a pretty traditional path when it comes to dietetics. I graduated in 2020 from Bowling Green State University with a bachelor's in dietetics, and I'm now on my second year of the program here. My first rotation I had was at the Wexner Medical Center for food service, which was a great experience. I had worked in a hospital before during undergrad in a kitchen to get some experience, but seeing it operate on just such a large scale was a really great learning experience. And after that, I had my first outpatient rotation with COPC, where we did directly diabetes counseling, which was an awesome experience for me because that's always been one of my interests and passions. So that was a great experience. And then I moved on to my community rotation, which was at Lutheran Social Services. So that was a population I had never worked with before. It was also a really great learning experience, just kind of seeing how nutrition can play into like working with the community and giving back. So that was a good one as well. I had another outpatient rotation with Ohio State, and that one was interesting because it was all telehealth. So I feel like I got some experience doing virtual counseling for the first time, which was obviously a useful skill as things are shifting online recently. And then I had my first clinical rotation at Dublin Methodist Hospital, which I was really nervous for because I have always loved like clinical dietetics. And I feel like just even before being in this program, everyone like dreads the clinical rotation. It sounds like so scary, but I was really surprised at what a great experience it was. All my preceptors were amazing. They really like wanted to help me learn, and it was so much less intimidating than I had thought it would be. So that was a wonderful experience. And I had just finished up my last rotation with Dr. Taylor, actually. So during that rotation, we worked on like research papers and doing educational materials for the community. So overall, my experiences have been really well-rounded, and I would have never thought I would be able to do all this stuff in different areas. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to my next few rotations before graduation. It's gone by really fast.
Thanks, Chelsea. Wow. I mean, just hearing you and Avni like go through everything you've experienced thus far. I mean, we're right there with you because we're helping you, you know, plan for it and sharing your schedules. But I mean, Yeah, I think you nailed it. It sounds like both of you have had really nice, like well-rounded experiences thus far. So thank you for sharing. And then last but not least, we have Kara Johnson. So she offers a little bit of a different perspective, I think, to coming into the program because she is a graduate of Ohio State's DPD program. So she can share a little bit about that as well.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me. And I know listening to Chelsea and Avni kind of got me more excited about the next few semesters too. So I graduated from Ohio State in 2016. I was a graduate of the College of Education and Human Ecology with a nutrition science degree. At the time, I thought that I wanted to go to PA school or graduate school, but wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do after I actually completed my degree. So I went to work for YMCA of Central Ohio. And while I was there, I got to facilitate the YMCA's diabetes prevention program, which was super beneficial for kind of career planning, and really enjoyed getting to talk to people about nutrition, but knew that I wasn't going to be able to make actual recommendations, knew I wasn't going to be able to make suggestions and kind of make more of a larger impact. So it was then that I was thinking I should go and learn more about medical dietetics and medical nutrition therapy. So I worked there for about 3 years and then went back to OSU to complete the didactic program in dietetics, completed the DPD, and decided to apply to the MDN program from there. So far, it's been, like Chelsea said, a very well-rounded experience. A lot of my classes have been beneficial, even though I've only done one supervised practice rotation so far. I completed my food service rotation at Madison Health, which is a rural hospital in Madison County, which is just 30 minutes west of campus about. Which was a really fun experience for me. When I was an undergrad, I was a nutrition aide at the Wexner Medical Center, which is huge. So I got to experience more of that rural hospital experience. It was much smaller, more intimate, and really enjoyed working with my preceptor, not only getting to talk to patients about their food, but also kind of reorganizing their kitchen to work better in this COVID world. So that was really fun for me, and I'm looking forward to future rotations as well.
Great, thanks, Kara. So now I think what we want to do is open it up to our attendees, and this is your chance to, ask questions, I think, to our current, current MDN students to get that, student perspective. You can also ask any other general questions that you might have. So I don't know if you want to drop your questions in the chat and we can kind of filter through them as they come through. And I'm sure if you don't feel comfortable asking a question, you could always email one of us, or maybe our current students would be willing for us to share their contact information. So Courtney Kendall asked, can anybody speak about Ohio itself, just as it is as a state? So I'm assuming you're coming maybe from out of state, Courtney?
Yeah. I'll start the comments there because I think it also links kind of to the class size and everything else.
Yeah.
Ohio State is one of the largest universities in the country, but the program, your classes are probably going to be about the size of what you see on Zoom right now. So you're going to have the resources of a very large institution and the medical center and the connections that we have and the faculty that we have and the research that's happening and all of that expertise. But it's going to be in a size program where you can't hide. We will all know who you are. But it's going to have that faculty to student ratio where you really can feel like you know the faculty and the faculty know you. I think Avni can, and Chelsea can really speak to that, Kara as well, and what that experience is like. Ohio is, and in fact, Columbus is kind of a cross-section of the country. A lot of companies use Columbus as a test market because it really hits a diversity of kind of race, ethnicity, culture, socioeconomic status, et cetera, where it's one of the few land grant institutions. It's actually an urban serving institution, where many of the other land grants are within more rural areas. So, but we're surrounded by rural areas. So it really becomes kind of a cross section of the US to get that experience between serving rural communities, serving inner city communities, suburban, just from that diverse perspective. And I think from there, I'll pause and let others respond.
There was also a question about what's been your favorite, what was it, class, your favorite rotation or class that you've had thus far. I don't know if one of our students wants to answer that.
I can speak on that. My favorite rotation so far was with COPC doing the diabetes counseling. As I mentioned, it's something that I've been really interested in. So that was really nice because I was able to work with Kathy Garrison and helping her to place me in somewhere that I was interested in. So that just gave me a really diverse experience because I would do one-on-one counseling. We would also do group sessions. So I just loved everything about that. So that was my favorite rotation. And I think my favorite class would be the nutrition support class I took with Dr. Roberts this past semester, just because nutrition support and critical care is another one of my interests. So I thought it was really nice to be able to get into a class that's just about my interests. It's easier to focus when you're like really passionate about something. And a lot of the like coursework and projects we did were hands-on. So I liked that part of it as well. So yeah, I think that was my favorite so far.
Completely agree, Chelsea. The nutrition support class was one of mine too. Dr. Roberts organized it in a way that challenges you beyond just like, you know, what you read in textbook or anything like that. She always set up her exams almost as like simulations of kind of coming, and she organized her lectures as more discussions, bringing in guest lecturers, you know, different backgrounds and exposing us to all these different avenues that you can take nutrition, you know, that this degree will take you on. So that was one of my favorite courses as well. And I would say my favorite rotation so far, I would say two of them. One was like my endocrinology rotation. I think it was really nice being in like a small primary care setting like that. And you really worked very closely with the nurses, with the physician, and just seeing what an important member of that team the dietitian was. That was really good for me to see. So, and I really liked the relationships that the dietitian I worked with, Jennifer, she was building these long-term relationships with patients, which I could see like how much they valued her role in their own healthcare. So that was really wonderful to see. Oh, and the other rotation was the one I did with Dr. Kennel that I just finished up. I just love the flexibility that she gave me. She, you know, she asked me, she's like, here's some projects that I have, but what's really important to you? And she gave me that flexibility, and I really appreciated that. And I really did enjoy doing the retail, you know, curriculum, because that's, again, something that I had never been exposed to, but I was a retail pharmacist for many years. So I feel like I was able to tie, you know, my experience in with that, but I really appreciated the flexibility that came with that rotation.
And I can speak on this very briefly. My favorite rotation has been my only rotation, but it was very great. Really enjoyed working with my preceptor and working in that rural hospital environment. And then my favorite class so far has been an advanced nutrition education and counseling class. Being able to apply some of the things that we're learning in those pathophysiology classes. Okay, here's the knowledge that I have. How do I explain it and communicate that to others? I felt like that was a really fun class because not only did we have kind of that application kind of curriculum, but also we got to do a school nutrition assignment. We partnered with a local school program and got to speak on different nutrition topics for these kiddos, and it was really fun. So that's been my favorite so far.
Can anybody speak to living, you know, or maybe you can speak just on the generally about the group and your peers, you know, like how do most people and where do they live off campus, and just sort of maybe any of those logistics?
I can speak to that. As far as housing goes, a lot of people, at least in my cohort, from what I've heard, live just off campus. A lot of folks live in Grandview or just in off-campus housing. I think that the university also offers graduate housing as well. But yeah, a lot of times, even before the semester starts, we created a group me for our cohort, and a lot of people find roommates that way, which is really helpful if that's what you're looking for.
Yeah, there are plenty of areas, like 10 to 15 minutes outside of like central campus area that offer really easy, you know, freeway, highway access, you know, just because, you know, it is Ohio State's program. A lot of our sites are, you know, within that 20 to 30 minute radius outside of the city. So, you know, you're not necessarily always coming into campus. Obviously you are for classes, but as far as speaking for rotations go, let's see. Yeah, and then
always connect
with the neighborhoods. Yeah,
we can always connect you, right? So like we like to introduce the incoming class to the existing class, and that way you have people, a whole sounding board of people to ask, like, is this area safe? Right, should I live here?
right. Yeah.
What are the restaurants like? What do you do for fun? I would say like Columbus really embraces local businesses, and so it has some unique qualities.
Very art centered and
art-centered.
very food centered. Lots of good food. And then there were a few questions that were answered within the chat. I know Dr. Kennel answered the question about assistantships and fellowships and sort of what that means as far as funding goes.
I think there's another question about like what makes an effective experience.
Oh yes, yes.
I don't know if any of our students want to speak to what they think, you know, makes them an effective student, or the MDN an effective means to becoming a dietitian. Kind of interpret that a couple ways.
I think to be an effective student in this program, it's really important to be organized, because there's a lot going on, but it's something like you're more than capable of doing if this is like what you want to do. And I think just to keep reminding yourself of the end goal, you know, like where you want to go, what you want to do. It seems kind of really overwhelming coming into grad school. I remember feeling that exact way, but now with only like a semester left, it's crazy how much you've accomplished like in 2 years to think about. So I think like just staying organized, remembering like your goals and what you want to do, and just like if you need help, ask for it. The faculty here is really great about that. Like our first year, we were practically all online, but I still feel like I was able to develop connections with my peers and with the faculty. Everyone's willing to help if you need it. So I think just using your resources around you and staying on track is what has helped me.
Yeah, I agree, Chelsea. And I think what makes this particular program so wonderful is I think they really balance out the time that you spend in the classroom with those real life experiences in the rotation. And I think that the faculty is just extremely interested in learning more about the students, and they get to know you on an individual level and want to know more about, you know, what your own interests are. So, you know, if there's an aspect of this field that is particularly of interest to you, just speak up, just vocalize it. And I feel like one of the faculty, or more than one likely, is going to find opportunities for you to learn more about that. And that's always one thing that's really struck me about this faculty, is how interested they are to get to know the students as individuals and help them succeed.
I would just say that I agree with all of that. Stay organized, communicate well, be detail oriented. There's lots of opportunities that faculty give you to network, even lots of guest speakers, which is wonderful. And yeah, connect with your faculty. They care.
I will say too, I mean, I feel like one of the differences between undergrad versus grad school is, I mean, a lot of the students, you're taking more ownership, it's your experience, right? And so I feel like the more you put into it and the more you participate, even in Zoom classes, and you have your, cameras on and you communicate with your professors and other, faculty and staff, if you're on top of that and you're, organized, like all of our students said, it's going to be, I think, a more meaningful and overall just positive experience for everybody involved. If you're kind of coasting, I don't know, you might feel a little bit differently, but I do think, I mean, it's been a while since I've graduated, but that's sort of what my takeaway, like from that shift from undergrad to grad school. It's like, it's just, you have to be in a different mode, I think, a different frame of mind, and where, this is truly your experience. So.
Yeah, I'll build on what Danielle said there. It's really making that transition from kind of where you've been high school learning and then undergrad and going after points. This is where we make the transition where it's less about, did I get a 61 or a 62 on a 70-point assignment or a 65-point assignment, as it is really about mastering the content. And we are really content and competency focused and not grade focused. Because what we're really trying to do is prepare you to be the best when you get out there. And what that means is it's less about memorizing and being prepared to regurgitate, but it's really about that critical thinking and immersion. So it may feel like, okay, I'm sitting in 3 hours worth of MNT type lecture. What that's really doing is preparing you to do that active work in education and counseling and in the lab. So it's going to then require you to then go back through and revisit that content and really develop mastery of it, instead of how can I memorize, get a good grade on the next exam and move forward. So it's going to be that time outside of class that you spend that really makes it a full-time immersive program, because we're really trying to get like 4 years of education crammed into 5 semesters at a graduate level. At the higher level, we're turning this MNT up to 11. So we're going to put it on steroids and give you like that high level. But what it ultimately means is you got to come in, kind of take charge of your own learning and make sure that when you're confused about something, you're prepared to either figure out what you need to do to learn that yourself or get help. Reach out to the faculty and get those questions answered. So when you start doing it on Wednesday, we know that you have the information from Monday that you're ready to put forth actively on Wednesday, and not help us to help get you up to speed so that you can actually be active on Wednesday. And I think that's kind of the big shift, is how do you prioritize your time? How do you now get yourself prepared so that you can take mastery of it and take responsibility to be able to kind of build on those, as opposed to tell me what I need to know so I can do this next task.
A question came in about how many students end up working in Columbus or surrounding areas. Well, we don't know that quite yet, because we'll be graduating the first cohort this spring. But I mean, maybe we can speak sort of generally, based on our other program pathways. I don't know the exact percentage. I mean, maybe Dr. Kennel, Dr. Taylor, but I mean, I'd say close to 50%, probably half and half, and I think it's always interesting. Some students, that are maybe transplants, not from Ohio or Columbus, they end up staying here. And then maybe those that are from Ohio end up going elsewhere or out of state. So I do also think that, Columbus is somewhat saturated within the field of dietetics, but for those students that have really tried and prioritized staying in Columbus and finding a job, they've been able to, definitely within like a 6 to 12 month time frame. I think it just depends on everybody's individual, circumstances, and some people can wait it out a little bit longer than others, depending on their circumstances, if they're sort of holding out for a certain position or a certain practice area. Any other questions? We are right on time. I mean, 12:30 on the dot. And I will say, I just was checking out Indeed this morning, not for my personal search, but just to see what was out there, because I like to do that for our students and graduates. But there are some pretty, I'd say, like specialized, positions that are out there, whether in pediatrics, sports nutrition in Columbus. So there is definitely opportunity, now, and it looks like within the next couple of months within dietetics here. So we just want to thank you so much for taking, an hour and a half out of your time to learn more about our MDN program here. It's been a pleasure to share about the program and also come together. Obviously, yes, we wish we could have been in person. So I can, once we sort of get the transcript and everything in the chat all finalized, if you would like any of the contact information or resources that were included here, feel free to email me or any of us, and we can get that to you. It might be a couple days before we have everything sort of finalized and the link to share. But we wish you the best of luck wherever you are in your academic journeys, whether you're approaching graduation or you're still, in your undergrad. We look forward to talking more with you and learning more about you. So we thank you. I don't know if any of the other faculty have closing words.
No, thank you. Thank you, Danielle, for organizing, and thank you everyone for spending this time with us. Best wishes in the new year.
Yeah. Thank you. Take care. Stay safe and healthy.